Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series from Pharma Voice. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship from Microsoft. For more information about Microsoft, visit Microsoft.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, Editor-in-Chief of Pharma Voice magazine, meets with Tzvia Bader, CEO, TrialJectory.
Tzvia, thank you, and welcome to the Pharma Voice WOW podcast program.
Thank you so much for having me today.
We're especially happy to have you join us because you have a very personal story to share. I understand you are a cancer survivor and a 3-time clinical trial participant. Can you talk about some of those lessons you learned firsthand about the importance for all patients to have access to the best treatments possible for their individual needs? And I know that was a springboard for you to your company, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey actually started December 2013. I'm a techie. I was in the tech business all my life, tech executive. And then I went to the doctor to check something I was concerned about. So I had a little spot on the bottom of my foot, bleeding a little bit. I didn't think that much of it. And when I was sitting at the doctor's office, she took one look at me and basically said, "I think you have melanoma. I can't even biopsy at this point." Yeah, she was, I mean, she was amazing because she didn't hesitate. She didn't say, "I need to do additional testing." She was like out there saying, "It is what it is. I'm not letting you leave my office because I cannot even biopsy this at this point. I need to get you to a surgeon." And it was a shock. I went to see her expecting, a small checkup where she'll give me a cream or something and I'll move on, right?
Right.
I had at the point I already had 3 girls, but my baby was 1 year old. I did not expect that hearing the words that you have cancer. I remember even my husband was on a business trip and I called him and said, "You're not going to believe what the doctor just said. I'm not sure she's absolutely right, but she wants me to see a surgeon." And he said, "Okay, you better make sure you're going to see him and quickly. Let's not drag it. Let's see what it is." So yes, that's how my journey started. And pretty quickly, I was diagnosed with advanced melanoma, metastatic melanoma. And it was like I mentioned, it was a big shock to me, although it was the second time I came across cancer. I lost my mom 20 years before to cancer.
Oh.
Yeah. And, when my mom was diagnosed, we basically followed her oncologist guidelines, right? We didn't know much about the disease. We didn't know much what to do, but we followed. The doctor said she needs to get through chemo, then another round of chemo. And as her disease progressed and treatment did not start to fail, you sort of start questioning, is there additional treatment out there? Does our doctor know all the options? And do we need to do something about it? And we're not really sure what to do. And then at a certain point, I sat with her oncologist, and she basically said at that point, "Listen, at this point, we need to look at clinical trial. Maybe there is a better option out there for her." And I asked her, and think about it, it was 20 years ago. I was a young computer geek. Ask her, "Okay, where do I go about finding clinical trials? What do we do about it?" And she said, "Well, this is the tricky part. I'll ask my colleague, but maybe you have this internet. Maybe you can look online and find something."
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah, I know. It's the days, the early days, the AOL days, the day you got connected and it was actually making noise." Yeah,
oh my God. Right.
I know that tells your audience how old I am, but let's ignore that part. But basically, I went online and I searched for, really, it took me like 2 weeks of digging and digging. I ended up finding few options that I didn't know if it makes sense. By the time our doctor reviewed those options and we kind of agreed on something that makes sense, it was too late for my mom. So fast forward 20 years, I'm still a techie, more advanced techie, been part of this digital revolution, getting this diagnosis of with not the best of outcome. So I go online, I read, I see the bad statistic of survivorship, and I'm telling to myself, well, they don't know me. This does not apply to me. I will beat it, but obviously I need to know how to beat it. So I went and met this oncologist and waited 3 hours. He spent the whole of 5 minutes with me, and I sincerely don't blame him because he had a patient, he had a waiting room full with patients. And he basically told me, listen, you're not doing that great. We need to do additional brain MRI, and then maybe I have one clinical trial for you. And I was just looking at him and saying, whoa, wait a second. Clinical trial? Why clinical trial? Why only one? Don't I have more option? Like, where am I heading from here? And he basically brushed me off and said, I don't have time for this now. Do the additional test. We'll talk about it and we'll see. So that was the last time he saw me, obviously.
Oh, I would hope.
Exactly. But that's like kind of hit home really strongly. It was just like, why am I not presenting with option? And B, how can I trust one source of information? Like, when I want to book a flight or a vacation, I don't just call an agent and say, book me a flight these days, right? I go to Kayak, I look at all my options, I see what's cheaper. I want to buy a house, I'll go to Zillow. Even though I have a realtor I work with, I still want to see my options. So if I want to beat this, I need to do something different. I went online and I kind of thought I'll find my Zillow or TripAdvisor that kind of will tell me what are my options, and then I can decide where do I go to treatment, which is, if you think about, a very logical expectation for us as patients these days, but that was not the case. And it hit home hard that I read a lot about option. I found out that there's clinical trials and they're the most advanced and better option for me. And I found out clinicaltrials.gov as a database, but I really couldn't get the dots connected because, I'm not an oncologist. So I really didn't understand the medical jargon, and I didn't understand all this eligibility criteria. And I couldn't really tell what's right for me and what's wrong for me, and what do I fit and what doesn't fit. And I was, as you can imagine, a little bit frustrated, if you can tell by my personality at this point. So I continued with my journey. I basically moved to a larger center, close, not that far from home, a bigger center, an oncology focus center, where I met an amazing oncologist. And I met with him for the first time, and he offered me, I think it was 2 optional clinical trials, and I already said, I doubled my odds. But I asked him a simple question. I said, okay, if what you're presenting to me right now, it's the best out of everything out there? Or am I supposed to now go and shop around in other centers and see what they have to offer? And then again, how am I going to make a decision? And he was honest as can be and basically told me, listen, what I can offer you is only the things that are running in this center. And even then, it's like a subset of what I'm involved with and aware of. So you see that you're getting a limited access to information, which is not the best of places to be.
No.
And I said, okay, I'll start my journey. So I started with the first clinical trial that it was a targeted drug. That's after my 3 surgeries, obviously. And then that ran for a period of 7 months, which was great. And then the disease came back. And then I said, okay, so I need to look at my option again. And then I ended up saying, okay, so I need to make sure that I'm being offered more than the limited viewpoint. And I got introduced to Avital via a friend. She's now, which is a cancer researcher in NYU that did her PhD and a postdoc. She's now a great friend of mine and also my partner in TrialJectory. And I basically told her, can you help me understand this database? Can you help me look around and see what my option is? Because if the first one failed, I want to make sure that the second one will do better. Or, I want to make sure that what I'm choosing is not as default because that's what my doctor offered me, but actually the one that makes most sense for me at this point. And that's what we've done. She actually helped me and reviewed clinicaltrials.gov, and we've looked at different options. And I chose number 2. That was a combination of a vaccine with immunotherapy. And that worked for like a year and a half or a year. And then the disease came back, as it happened. And then we went through the entire process again, and hence clinical trial number 3, which was a combination of chemo with immunotherapy. And that did the trick for me. So I've been NED for 3.5 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But what a journey. Wow.
I know. I went through the different, also, I think the drugs development at significant points through my own personal journey, if you think about it.
Sure. It just goes to show the as much progress is being made, how where there are still so many significant gaps in treatment options.
Exactly. And how the more progress we make, A, there's more options, B, there's more variation, and the impact is different. And, I think the whole understanding of the personalized medicine is the fact that the art of matching a patient to a treatment is a complex one. And there's a lot of attributes needed to come into play. And it's also not a one-time thing. It's a journey until you find the right fit there. And it's not simple.
Right.
And every time there is this big hype and a promise, like there was on the Targeted as a standalone, and the immunotherapy is a standalone, and you see that the reality is more complex than that. But from a
Yep.
patient perspective, I can tell you that every time I get a few more months or a year, or it's a victory, because the more time passes along, more options also arrived, as long as the development, which takes into what's going on in the COVID-19. But as long as there is investment in R&D, and there is clinical trials running, and there is innovation and development, there is a hope.
Well, your optimism, resilience, and determination are quite laudable, and I am so inspired by your path and your journey and to where you've come to today. Um, you know, Other folks may have just said, "Nope, I'll just listen to my oncologist," and you had the vision and the what do you call it, the feistiness to go and say, "Nope, this is not this is not right for me, nor it's not right for my life, and it's not right for my family." So you really are a voice for so many patients who just don't have that inner determination. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of patients, unfortunately, in this process become voiceless, whether because they're overwhelmed from the disease, whether they're overwhelmed, they're so scared, um, and whether it's because, having the dialogue also of challenging an authority like your oncologist, it's a
Oh,
scary step to take. And, like, what do I know? He studies all this year. What do I know? I don't even understand half the words that he uses. But it's wrong, because we put the oncologist in an impossible position. How can we expect them to know everything? How can we expect them to be familiar with all the different drugs that are out there, with all the different clinical trials that are out there? Not only to be familiar, also remember in real time that this is this trial, and this is this setable, and that's the patient, the eligibility criteria, and connect it to the patient that is in front of them when they meet patient for 5 minutes, and they have like 200 active patients. How would they know what is a patient tolerance to pain? Can he take something that has significant side effects, or does he need something that might take longer but with less side effects? Or is it someone that is actually, a single mom that cannot afford a treatment that will take her off work for a long period of time, because she does need to provide for her family? There are so many attributes that comes into play, both medical and a personality and attributes, or in a mindset, that comes into play in this art of matching a patient to a treatment, that we cannot expect the oncologist to do it all for us. We need to find a way to own it, and we need to remove barriers to patients if we want them to own it.
amazing. Yes. It almost makes you wonder if there's not some form of intermediary that needs to be, the oncologist is there, but that he needs a researcher on staff to help him or her make these decisions in terms of that patient and matching the right patient to the treatment. I love that you said it's the art. So it needs to take in all these other considerations, but that seems to be that there's the big gap there in the treatment journey.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, there could be another function, but actually my belief, and that led us to TrialJectory, is that technology can also play a role here. Because
Yes.
if you think about another clinical trial coordinator, again, it's another resource that have to come through a large set of data, a large set of information. That will take time, and it's not scalable, because can he do it for the whole 200 patients that he's treating right now? Probably not. So we need something that is much more scalable, that also, like you said, it mitigates and removes the barriers. And I think technology has a role. When you look at different use cases of technology in other industry, like the example I've mentioned before, Kayak or Zillow. What they've done is exactly that, right? They took a large set of data and they analyze it quickly and they filter through it and they match it to a preset condition or attributes of people. The best use case for artificial intelligence, people are not aware of it, is actually personalized marketing. So people like you bought this, people like you watch this. And if you think about it, it's exactly the same. It's looking at a lot of attributes of data and matching it to an individual. So, and none of those tools have been used in, unfortunately, still in the healthcare, and especially on the oncology and for the patient side. So if we take what technology can do, which is analyze large sets of information quickly and actually match different data sets of information, and then leave the decision making to what human can do. And then, you know, a doctor can have this dialogue, his clinical trial supporter can have additional deep diving and help in the decision making. Decision can only be made by human, but bringing in the relevant information to the table, that's where technology can help.
And so that leads us right to TrialJectory, right? So talk to me about your company and how your mission is, and it's obvious from what you've just said, to democratize cancer care and expand access to new treatments. Yeah, what a worthy mission. So talk to me a little bit about the company.
Thank you so much for that. So based exactly on what we said. So when I got my NED news and I knew that I'm up and capable again to tackle the world, I wanted to make my journey make some sense out of it. And I want it to be meaningful. And what I wanted basically to do is help other patients find access to advanced treatment. And, you know, I was lucky. I found this friend was a cancer researcher who can assist me. I was even lucky by having access to one of the best cancer centers in the world. Others don't. And I wanted to use my background in technology and make this accessible to all. So I grabbed this cancer researcher and I got another friend who is a data scientist and machine learning, artificial intelligence expert, and another one who is a product guy. And I basically said, let's build a platform for patients that will help them in a matter of minutes see all their relevant options. Basically mimic the mind of an oncologist by reading all those treatment information and giving patient access to that. And that's what we've done. We built TrialJectory exactly with that mission. So a patient can come in and have the Zillow-like experience. He can tell us about his disease, his diagnosis, his mutation, if he had a biopsy, what treatment he received, what was the outcome for him, overall health issues. And then in a matter of minutes, he gets matched with all the different clinical trials that he meets the eligibility criteria. So we remove the question. First of all, we remove the question of what's out there. You immediately see what's out there. And those are just treatments that are right for him. And the other thing that we wanted to show him is all is different variation of options. So if I'm collecting all this information from patients about, you know, their journey, patients that are like cancer, not just patients who are breast cancer, but I actually can show a triple negative breast cancer with PD-L1 positive, what other treatment have patient received and what was the outcome for them. So in a matter of minutes, you can actually see all your different options. You can see clinical trials that are right for you. You can see other treatment options, and you can see what was the outcome for other patients, exactly like you. So that's where the discussion starts. That's where your decision-making start. And now you can go to your oncologist and say, let's review the option and let's decide. This one has more side effect. This one is a longer term. This trial actually takes the approved chemo and combined with immunotherapy. So that makes a lot of sense. It's worth looking into. And that is the type of discussion that should take place in the oncologist room, and that should be the starting point. In order to develop this type of platform, we had to invest a lot of time in developing the technology. So what we've done is we developed an artificial intelligence engine that can read through treatment protocol. And it might sound simplistic, but it's a hell of a task. Trust me about it. When I recruited our CTO, the artificial intelligence expert, initially he told me, listen, I don't think it'll be such a complex task. So it might not be techie challenging for me, but I'll do it because I believe it's for doing good. 2 years later, he lost a lot of hair. What he's got became white. And he doesn't think that anymore because it's a huge task if you think about it. We have to train a machine to understand treatment protocol, to read through eligibility criteria, to read through description, and extract from it all those different terms and understanding of all those different combination, drugs name, genetic mutation, biomarkers, overall health condition. There's a lot of attributes that comes into play, and we need a machine that is able to read them and understand the relationship between them, because in a lot of this time we're looking for patient naive unless received PD-L1 inhibitors drugs. So there's a complexity there, right? That a machine needs to be trained to understand in order to then match it to a patient. And that's what we've done. We developed this smart engine that can read through it, and we train him. We're oncology focused only. We train it indication by indication. And then when it's ready, we take it to the next level. So then it can read through those protocols. We're creating our own database of attributes of patients that are required for a trial. So one of the challenges for a patient, okay, so how do I know if those list of attributes are right for me? So that's problem number one. And as I described, we solve it by, we curate those attributes into question, and it's a dynamic questionnaire. So I'm not gonna ask you 100 questions like in a form. Actually, based on every patient almost get a different questionnaire based on his input. Did he have a biopsy? He didn't. In his biopsy, is BRAF positive? He's not. He received Keytruda. I didn't. So everyone gets their own little path and provide their medical information in a kind of friendly, intuitive way. So that's the first part. And then they get matched. So I remove this first barrier of knowing what's right for me. And then there's the second barrier that we mentioned. How do I read it? How do I understand it? So the second part of our engine is we actually automatically curate the information to make it accessible for patients. And what do I mean by that? If you'll take some of the titles even of the trials or description of the trials, it's still in a language that doesn't necessarily mean a lot to patients. But we can easily, and that's what our platform does, curate it and basically say, this is a combination of a PD-L1 with chemotherapy protocol for advanced melanoma patients. So that's something a patient understands. So all of a sudden it's not foreign. Okay, now I understand what this trial is about. Now I want to now we basically present to him the other information that that he basically wonders about. How the treatment is being given. Is it an IV? Is it a shot? Is it a pill? What is the study goal? So are they looking for disease to stop disease progression? Are they looking to extend life? Or are they just testing reduced side effects? So let's see that. What is the phase of the trial? Is it blinded or not blinded? What is the category of this drug? Is it targeted? Is it immunotherapy? Where does it all falls in? So we basically, the machine curate the information, and if you think act as a translator to the patient language. So not only can see his option, he can also understand them.
That's fascinating.
And
yep.
That's our story.
No, it's fascinating. And so my question is, once you get through all of this and you come out and you have to go back into the oncologist's office and you say, here's the information, what is that level of receptivity from the oncologist? Are they happy to have that information, or do they feel threatened?
So it's a very good question, Karen. And I think it depends, and it depends on the oncologist.
Sure.
There is the more advanced one are really happy about it because they know it saved them the legwork, and it provide them with the right context to have a meaningful conversation about treatment option. So not only he saved them time and legwork, it presented them with options that otherwise they might not even be aware of or think of. So definitely can give them the option to provide a better care to their patient with the most advanced option, right? That's not easily accessible, not even to them. Also, we know from research, the more active part a patient takes in his journey, the better the outcome is for a patient. So not only we're giving him the better option with more advanced treatment option, by giving him a role in it, he probably will have a better outcome. So that's part of it. Others actually prefer them to come with this type of result because they understand that patients are active anyway, and patients are in Dr. Google anyway. But coming from Dr. Google, they'll come with a lot of noise, with a lot of information that is irrelevant. And then, as one oncologist told me, I'm spending the 10 minutes we have together, or the 5, basically saying why this is not relevant, and this is not relevant, and this is not relevant. So it's leaving both the patient and the oncologist frustrated and a little bit defeated because they didn't make any way progress. So even those who doesn't necessarily would think about choosing the most advanced option prefer that to happen now in this context rather than just Google nonsense. And like always in life, there is one that still doesn't understand the change, the winds of change, and might still resist it and say, no, 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 I want to put you on chemo like I did on this chemo protocol. I've been doing it for the last 15, 20 years.
Right.
And this is what I'm used to doing. And this is what I do with my patient at this point. And that's fair enough as well. And then it's up to the patient. If he feels like he feels comfortable going through this route, great. At least he knows what the other option. He made a conscious, educated decision to go with this route. And if he doesn't feel comfortable, at least he knows that he has option. His oncologists are not offering him, and then he should go to another clinic and explore it with, have a second opinion, and continue exploring the more advanced option that he has. Absolutely. I think it's all about visibility and transparency. Whatever route you end up taking, have the options.
Absolutely. So fascinating about this whole process for you and starting up the company and working through all this with your disease. And at the end of the day, where do you see the company going? What is your ultimate goal for TrialJectory?
So my ultimate goal for TrialJectory is, like I said, I want it to be the Zillow for all chronic disease. I want it to be the place where a patient gets the diagnosis and go to and see his option. I want it to be the place that actually the oncologist before the meeting go to see the option, where they can review it together and spend their time analyzing the different option and making a decision that is based on data and information. I would like it to be the place that actually bring also the patient voice and data back into the pharma. So there's a lot of discussion in the pharma industry about patient centricity and patient voice and bringing the patient into it. But the only way to bring patient into it is if you understand the patient and you see his journey and you see who they are and what, not just the patient who are in the large centers, but actually the patients that are in the community center, that are all over the country from diverse race and demographic, and have that voice and that profile and data reflected also in the decisions or decision about eligibility, the criteria, participating in trial, approving drugs when we know the different side effects on true representation of the population. I think there's a long way to go where the pharma sees the patient as integral part of their processes, where the patient play an integral role in making this health decision with them for themselves and team with their oncologist in this journey.
It's amazing. And I was going to ask you, have you had any conversations with pharmaceutical companies or even contract research organizations, the folks that implement clinical trials?
Yeah, so our main focus at the beginning was just, of course, the patient, and we work with them and community oncologists. We now do have relationship with some of the pharmaceutical companies, and like you, they find it a very intriguing and different model of all of a sudden the patient is the one that's driving the decision, the ones who's initiating the whole process. And also they love the fact that via this engine, I can actually unbox the whole pre-qualification process for them. Because the way the engine work, right? We pre-qualified and we see which eligibility criteria exclude which patient population at any given point in this engine, and sharing this information with the pharma, in addition to the information why a patient chose not to apply even though he matched, whether there was too many visits to the clinic that he was concerned about, not enough testing, whether the location, because patients are in the Midwest and there is no site close by. All of that insightful information that can really help remove some of, we talked about the barriers for a patient to understand trial and apply to trial, remove the barriers for a pharma to understand the barriers for a patient to actually participate in a trial.
Excellent. One of our questions that we ask everybody for our WOW podcast program is to describe an event or an accomplishment that has changed the trajectory of their career and or their life. And you know, I'm going to ask you the same question just so that we have you on the record. But you know, what would you consider to be your WOW moment?
So I think, you know, I've answered that a little bit at the beginning, my entire journey throughout it. But I think my moment throughout it was when I went online after my diagnosis and saw that nothing changed since the day that I was searching for option for my mom. So it was like, I mean, on the one hand, I'll correct myself, a lot of change, right? There's so many more options out there. There's so many advancements out there. There's so many different treatments that never existed before. And there's a lot of content out there. I can be more educated in reading and understanding, but there's nothing out there that is practical, that is really a decision support, that can tell me what's relevant for me. And that moment that I realized that I'm still, that the health industry have not released the patient to be empowered and did not democratize access to information. When I read through it, and I remember going through reading, and I keep telling my husband, but I can't find the platform. I can't find the tool. And he said, what are you looking for? I said, I'm looking for a tool to tell me that this is the trials for me. Those are the drugs for me. Something simple that will help me understand. And he said, well, maybe it's not, there isn't anything like that out there. And that was the aha moment that I was just like, wow, it still doesn't exist. So I need to develop it. I need to build it so it will be for the next patient to get diagnosed. The other side of this aha moment is we had a patient a couple of months ago, the metastatic breast cancer with recurrence, that basically told us that, you know, she just came back from her doctor after her checkup to learn that her disease came back with a vintage metastatic. And her doctor said, I'm going to put you in chemo. And she said, I felt like I don't want to do the chemo again. It didn't work for the first time. Why would it work again? I needed to do something different. And she told that to her friends, and her friends told her about TrialJectory. And she said, I sat on the couch, I did TrialJectory in 5 minutes. All of a sudden, I saw 4 different trials option for me. And the next day, I already explored it with the representative of TrialJectory. And I went to the oncologist the next week when I was supposed to start chemo, and we showed him the list and say, look, what do you think about those options? And he told me, you know what, that makes a whole sense. Let's not start chemo. Go explore this trial. And she said, I felt so hooked. All of a sudden, I had a hope. That evening in front of the TV, having those conversations with her oncologist, we gave her hope that she didn't have before. And it kind of closed the loop for me, because this is what I wanted. I wanted the next one to have a tool, to have option and hope.
Amazing. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us and with our audience. And hopefully people who are listening to this who know somebody who needs hope, they'll come to you and they can find a potential solution. So I want to wish you continued good health and success.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. And absolutely, anyone who needs help and hope, come to talk to us. And anyone from the pharma would like to get the barriers removed and get closer to your patient, we're here to help. It's truly a life mission, and it's not a job. It's not a company. It's about fulfilling missions in life, I think.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. And thanks again to Microsoft for sponsoring this episode. For more information about Microsoft, visit Microsoft.com. And don't forget to check out our other WOW podcast episodes at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2020 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks LLC.